Did you read the last story? This issue is even more exciting. Welcome to subscribe. Chapter 8. The Silver Bullet Raid on the Blood Tax Train. On November 23, 1897, the steam at Paris North Station condensed into frost in the cold air. Isabella's coat collar covered the rose-shaped birthmark on her right shoulder. She mingled with the crowd wearing numbered bracelets and walked towards the black train. The winding double helix pattern of the Dracula family on the train body glinted coldly in the moonlight. She touched the ventru ring left by her father with her fingertips, and the double helix pattern on the inner side of the metal resonated silently with the emblem on the carriage. B-7, come here for blood extraction, said the blood race nurse wearing a gas mask as she pinched Isabella's wrist. The moment the needle pierced, Isabella saw the faded silver moon disease mark on the back of the nurse's neck, the same shape as that of the opera singer. The blood-colored lanterns hanging in the carriage revealed the truth. Transfusion tubes were inserted into the necks of the human passengers, and dark red liquid was flowing into their bodies from the overhead pipes. The ice crystal-like substance condensed on the pipe walls was exactly the form of the first-generation blood in the underground palace mural. She looked down at her blood extraction label, and the words, Type B blood, were circled in red pen, exactly the same as the mark on the City Hall list in Chapter 5. The sound of silverware clashing came from the adjacent booth. 3 blood. Race nobles were sucking the blood from the wrists of humans with silver straws. The ventru ring on the ring finger of one of them was engraved with a rose pattern, exactly the same as the one that had fallen when her father was executed. The serum this time has been improved with the cold-resistant genes of the Icelandic tundra. The noble wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. The silver straw reflected the virus double helix pattern in the light. When the war breaks out, our soldiers will be able to gnaw at the throats of the enemy at 40 degrees Celsius. He pointed out of the window. The moonlight illuminated the iron cage hanging at the rear of the train, where the virus crystallized infected people huddled. Their pupils were in the shape of broken ice, and the same fluorescent blood as that of the rat swarm flowed under their skin. Isabella's birthmark suddenly grew hot. Fragments of the memory of her father's execution flashed through her mind. The ventru ring in the executioner's palm was exactly the style this person was playing with at the moment. She touched the silver dagger hidden inside the hem of her skirt. The unengraved pattern on the handle was slightly hot under the warmth of her body, the shape that Adrian had painstakingly polished last night, which was an exact match to the outline of her birthmark. The girl's blood is glowing. The nurse suddenly shrieked. The blue light bursting from the needle tip revealed the faintly visible rose patterns on Isabella's arm. The pupils of the nobles instantly crystallized, and the silver straws melted into liquid in their palms. The double helix pattern flowed upstream along the blood, directly pointing at her heart. An explosive gunshot came from the roof of the train. Adrian's silver dagger pierced through the window, and the engraved AW1897 on the handle was particularly dazzling in the blood-colored light. The moment he blew up the connection of the train, Isabella was pulled into the dark freight car. The familiar smell of burning silverware lingered at the tip of her nose, resonating at the same frequency as the blue light when treating the wound in Chapter 2. They're carrying out the Blood Tax 2.0 plan. Adrian tore off her blood extraction label. The word Charlotte on the chain of his pocket watch flashed. Using humans for virus domestication experiments, and Type B blood is the best host. Before he could finish, the iron door at the end of the carriage collapsed with a bang. 3 Dracula blood race members crushed the ice and approached. The double helix chips identical to the train emblem were embedded in their throats. Isabella's silver dagger slipped out of her hand in a panic and was stepped on by the nearest blood race member. The opponent's pupils were pure black crystals, exactly the same as when the opera singer mutated. The nameplate on his chest was engraved with LW001, the same as the number in Adrian's laboratory log. Your father's blood was sweeter than yours, the blood race member grinned, with human blood still on his fangs. It's a pity that when he knelt in the council hall, I didn't have time to drink more. These words were like silver needles piercing her temples. Memory fragments exploded in front of Isabella's eyes. At the execution ground where her father was hanged, Adrian stood in the shadows wiping his silver dagger, and this blood race member was collecting the blood dripping from her father with a silver straw. she suddenly bit the opponent's wrist. The moment the fishy, sweet blood race blood poured into her mouth, a scene from 1890 emerged on her retina. When her father was injected with the first-generation blood, the ventru ring around his neck flew towards her. A thrill of super-speed movement shot from her spine to her fingertips. Isabella snatched the silver dagger before the blood race member could react. When the blade slashed across the opponent's heart, she actually saw the virus flowing in his blood, trying to recombine. "They're cultivating the night demon breed." Adrian's voice came from the roof of the train. Only then did she notice that the floor of the freight car was engraved with Arctic coordinates, exactly the same as the marks in the sewer in Chapter 6. But the sweetness of the blood exploded in her nerves, and she uncontrollably pounced on the next blood race member. The silver dagger instinctively avoided the fatal spots. This was the hesitation of a human facing the same kind. When the blood of the infected person exploded on her tongue, her pupils turned blood-colored, and silver-white scales grew on her fingernails until Adrian's silver chain wrapped around her wrist. "Wake up!" The chain of his pocket watch slapped the side of her neck. Amid the clashing of metals, the word Charlotte on the inner side of the pendant emitted a blue light, like the lullaby her mother hummed before her death. Isabella looked down at her fingertips. The rose-shaped birthmark was flowing towards her palm along with the blood, and on the chest of the blood race member she had attacked, a rose-shaped seal pattern identical to that on the sarcophagus in the underground palace emerged. "They want to transform you into a weapon." Adrian kicked away the approaching mechanical hound and slashed open the floor to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside, crystal bottles labeled Type B blood were neatly arranged, just like what they did to Charlotte back then. Amid the sound of the gears of the mechanical hounds, the noble's laughter came from the loudspeaker. "Mr. White, do you think stealing the list can stop us?" The top of the carriage split open, and Leonardo Dracula's Fuguin looked down at them, holding Isabella's blood test report in his hand. AB type half-breed blood, perfectly compatible with the first-generation virus. The Vessel 07 your father recorded in the laboratory has grown up so much. This number hit her temples like a sledgehammer. Isabella remembered the words of the first-generation prince in the mural in Chapter 7, the seventh-generation vessel. In the notebook left by her father, there were indeed the words Vessel Plan 07, and the old photo that Adrian had hurriedly put away at that time had a laboratory with the same number in the background. "Take her to London." Adrian suddenly pushed her towards the secret passage. The silver chain left a burn mark on her wrist. "Leonardo's laboratory needs a living sample," and when he turned around, the moonlight illuminated the unhealed wound on the back of his neck, a double helix pattern brand unique to the Dracula faction. The exit of the secret passage was in a wheat field on the outskirts of Paris. Just as Isabella climbed out of the tunnel, the train behind her disintegrated in the silver bullet bombardment. In the burning carriage, she saw the noble throw her father's ring into the furnace. The double helix pattern in the fire resonated with her birthmark. Adrian's silver chain was still clenched in her palm. The engraved word Charlotte was stained red with blood, and for the first time she noticed that the initials of her mother's name, MV, were engraved on the inner side of the pendant. The howl of wolves came from the distance in the wheat field. She licked the remaining race blood at the corner of her mouth and tasted the flavor of her father's study in her memory. Old leather, silverware cleaner, and a faint smell of blood. This sense of discord made her tremble. She suddenly remembered the photo in the medicine cabinet in Chapter 2. Her father was hugging Adrian and Charlotte. All three were wearing ventru rings on their chests, and the baby in her mother's arms had the same rose-shaped birthmark around its neck as hers. Adrian walked out of the thick smoke. The ventru emblem on his cuff was scorched. In 1890, your father used his own blood to forge a death certificate for the vessel, and double quotes, he took out the blood-stained notebook. One page had a photo of Isabella as a baby, with a note beside it, AB-type blood, with virus affinity and purification ability, is the key to unlocking the Arctic seal. The roar of the Dracula airship came from the distance. Isabella touched the handle of the silver dagger, and the unengraved pattern suddenly appeared in her palm, the initials of her mother's name. She finally understood why the rat swarm worshipped her blood and why the underground palace mural became dynamic. Because in her veins flowed the virus of the first-generation prince and the purification blood of the Holy Maiden. She was a walking reliquary, Leonardo wants your blood to revive his wife, and the Ventru want your heart to continue their immortality. Adrian tore off his pocket. Watch. The North Star chart on the inner side was melting, and the first generation prince is waiting for you to complete the embrace. Do you know why I was present when he first called you in the opera house? His fingers stroked her birthmark. Amid the stinging pain of the silverware touching, Isabella saw the backstage of the opera house in 1897. Adrian was carving a rose pattern on the opera singer's makeup mirror, and that was exactly the precursor to the outbreak of the silver moon disease. Since your father injected the first-generation blood into your mother, his voice mixed with the roar of the airship, we've become pawns on the virus chessboard, and now, a silver bullet pierced through his shoulder. The Dracula hunters emerged from the shadows of the wheat field, their guns aimed at Isabella's forehead. Adrian's silver dagger was somehow back in her hand. The groove on the handle fit her birthmark perfectly. She suddenly saw the flow trajectory of the blood in the hunter's blood vessels, just like the distribution route of the reliquaries in the mural in Chapter 7. The moment the silver dagger was swung out, she finally understood the truth Adrian had been hiding. Her father's execution, her mother's death, and even her experience in the opera house were all to make the Dracula faction show their fangs. But at this moment, the race blood was boiling in her body. She stared at the L11897 on the hunter's badge and suddenly realized that this string of numbers was not only a number, but also the abbreviation of Leonardo Dracula. The train wreckage was burning. Sparks splashed onto Adrian's pocket. Watch, revealing the photo at the bottom. In 1890, he and her father were standing in front of the Ventru Council, holding not only her birth certificate, but also a secret order marked Vessel Purification Plan. Isabella suddenly felt a sharp pain in her palm. She opened her hand, and the coordinates of the Arctic ice layer emerged in the center of the rose-shaped birthmark, which was exactly the pattern on the hunter's badge. This issue ends here. The next issue will be even more exciting. Subscribe as soon as possible.